Today's date is December 30th, 2024. We're here for the oral history program, and my name is Jacob Stickle. I'm the archival assistant here at Warren County, and I'm here with...
My name is Lisa Benton, and I am the compliance supervisor with Warren County Children's Services, and I will be retiring tomorrow, December 31st.
You excited?
I am. I'm a little worried about what I'm going to do with my time.
Well, that's going to be the later question here.
Yeah, right.
And that's your official title, is being a compliance officer.
Compliance supervisor.
Okay. When and where were you born?
I was born in Cincinnati in 1958.
All right. Did you grow up there in Cincy, or did you come up here?
I grew up in Cincinnati, lived in Hyde Park, moved away for 1 year, lived in New Hampshire, and then moved back, and then spent the rest of from 6th grade on through high school in Marymount.
Oh, okay. Feels like that's a common one. And there we go. Wherever you lived. You were just in Connecticut for a couple of years?
New Hampshire for 1 year.
Hampshire.
It was my 5th grade year.
Okay,
my dad was a pediatric radiologist. He worked at Children's. Then we went to New Hampshire for a year. He's from Exeter, New Hampshire. So we went there and lived for a year. Had a 4-foot snowfall while we lived there, and then we moved back.
And come here for the mild winters, then.
Yes.
What jobs did you have prior to Warren County?
Well, I worked at 20 Mile House, which is was a historic restaurant in Mainville, Loveland, Mason. It's on that 4-way stop.
Mm-hmm.
I was a waitress and then bartended from 1981 to 1987. And then in around the 86, 87, I opened my own picture framing business.
All right.
I had that down in the old schoolhouse that's down off of Old 3C Highway.
Mm-hmm.
I was married at the time, and we had the hopes of opening a restaurant down there, but that never panned out. So I had the shop there for a couple years and then moved up to right across from Landon Park. I rented it originally was a chicken coop, but they changed it into a little tiny shop, and I rented it from an attorney, James Beaton.
Oh.
Yep. Did that for 15 years. I had my own business, the picture framing. And then when it was my income solely, I thought I need benefits, I need regular income, and I had my son. So I started working at a company called National Child Support, which was basically a collection agency. Mm-hmm. And I did that part-time in the mornings from 7 to noon, and then I would come back and then work at the shop from 1 to 5. And then I did that for about 6 months, and then I came to Warren County and started here part-time and did the same thing.
Oh.
Children's Services in 2002.
And
started part-time.
Oh, you started
but
part-time.
I wasn't a supervisor. I was more, I think that I was clerical.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, moved on up.
Looking for that stability, huh?
Yes.
Fair enough. And how did you learn about the position? You said it was from that agency prior, or?
Well, no, actually, one of the people that worked at National Child Support had originally worked for Warren County Child Support, left there, went to that agency, that private agency, was there, and then came back. But she and I have been friends prior to either working. So I met her I met her at 20 Mile House, and she would do that in the evenings, and I think child support during the day.
Oh.
So, so just through a friend and
word of mouth.
And so then she was here at Children's Services, then went to juvenile court, and now she's down in Cincinnati, Hamilton County, but not in child welfare anymore.
Oh, I would have thought you just kept going with that. You've been doing that for that long. To each their own. I thought I was going to be affiliated with the attorney that you're renting the chicken coop from.
It was, so you have to look, it did have the slanted roof, but it was not, it was I can't even imagine to tell you how big it was. No bathroom. I had to go into his office, which was like you shared the driveway. So the attorney's office was here, which originally was a house and had a garage, and then the chicken coop where the shop was right there. So
was it a tiny house, or was it large enough?
Tiny. I would say it was maybe about the size of this room, maybe a little bit bigger.
Oh, wow.
But it was enough that like one side was my workspace and the other side was like where customers would come in and pick frames and mats. And
big enough for that.
Big enough for that.
Wow. That's because we have roughly I don't know, it's like the size of an average master bedroom, I would say here. Mm-hmm. Okay. So why, if you don't mind me asking, why get out of the picture framing business?
Well, it was my son. Like I had a young son. I needed like the steady income. Whereas when you do your own business, you don't know when somebody's going to come in. And so, and it was benefits, medical coverage. Yeah. So.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
Yeah.
You never know. I mean, once you retire, you can go back to that. A lot of people are doing online businesses now.
Right. There's not a lot of picture framing businesses left anymore. I mean, they're just, I would say, a handful in the area that I know. I mean, of course, Michael's does it. I think Hobby Lobby does it. But I worked for one when I was in college in Marymount, and actually they just sold. So.
Oh.
Yep.
Just then. Shoot.
I know, because I was like, well, I could go back and work there, but.
Right. I would have thought the same. Like, I can always do that part-time.
Right.
I'm sure you'll figure something out. I know I've known some people like Amy Breeze, we mentioned earlier, turned one of her hobbies into more of a part-time job. I believe she works out and is a trainer for people.
Yeah. So. Well, I know she worked, I don't know if she still is doing part-time for, I don't know if one of the judges still here in Warren County. I'm not sure if she's still doing that, but I don't know that, we don't have part-time positions at Children's Services, and I don't really, not that I don't love child welfare and I didn't love my job, but I'm ready for something different if I even do it, if I do something different. And I probably will, because I'm not a sitter at home. I'm more like, let's go do something.
Let's move.
Yeah. So.
That's fair. And so you started in 2002. Has it always been located over there? Children's Services? Mm-hmm. Okay. So you mentioned you're not a sitter, you got to move. Is that work with your daily tasks and duties? So you get a chance to move around a lot when you do those?
Here at work? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm on the third floor, so I don't, I will, instead of like messaging somebody or calling somebody, I'll go down and talk to them. So yeah, I try to get up and move, not be sedentary.
That'll help.
Yes.
What's your daily work then? What do you usually do?
Well, I am responsible for entering all court orders into our system, so I do that. I am responsible for RMS, which is random moment samples. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No, I'm not.
So that's a state-driven program so what happens is workers will get an email, and it says you have been selected for a random moment sample, and it tells you like what time. So what it wants to know what you're doing at that time.
Oh. And
we get money for it. And if you do it's a hit, and it could be up to $3,000. It pays a lot of our salaries.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's just to check in to see.
So I'll go in and look at the ones that are completed, check them, make sure they're at the correct time, make sure the codes are correct, and then I go into, if it's connected to a case, I go into the case, and there's always should be an activity log to go with it. Check that time, make sure it matches. Yeah, so I do that, which that brings in just over $1 million a year to the agency.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And the other thing that I'm responsible for, well, not just the other thing, but 4E program, which is basically when children come into the agency custody, I have to do a determination to see if they meet the criteria to be program eligible, which means they have to hit a specific deprivation, whether it be death, absent parent, unemployment of a parent. And then once that is determined, then I have to, if they're reimbursable, if they're in a setting where we would get paid back from the state. And we don't get the full amount, we get about 64.9% back. So if we're paying out like $600 a month to a foster parent, we get paid back 64.9% of that from the state and federal government. And that brings in just over $1 million a year as well.
Okay.
So
getting some aid through that.
I'm sorry?
You're getting aid through that, I suppose? Or would you call it aid? Or
It's 4E. It's reimbursement for our placement costs.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that's, I'm also responsible for making sure Medicaid is up and running for all the children that come into agency custody.
Okay.
Let's see, what else do I do? We also, the system we work in is SACWIS, and so if information is entered incorrectly or they need to add information but things have already been approved, I then have to send in tickets to the care center, and then I work with them to get the information corrected. And so I do a lot of different things, not just like one particular thing. So hence part program, part fiscal.
Yeah, you weren't kidding.
Yeah. I did do ICPC, which is Interstate Compact for Placement of Children. So if, say we have a child in agency custody, they have a relative that lives in Indiana, and that relative says, I'd like to take placement of that child, then there's all kinds of documents that have to be sent to Indiana. There has to be a home study done, background checks. I used to do that, and I've handed that off this year to somebody else, actually probably like in October, November. There's other program that I was responsible for called ICMA, which is the Interstate, is it Child? I can't remember what the name, but basically if a child is adopted, somebody in Warren County adopts a child from New Hampshire, New Hampshire is responsible to send paperwork to the Columbus office. Columbus then sends it down. I open it up in our system to get Medicaid up and running for that child.
Gotcha.
So that's another thing.
Funneling down to the local level then.
Right.
Okay. Huh. Well, it's just a lot of...
It's a lot of things that, you know what I mean, and that's what's funny, because it's not funny, but I'm like, people don't understand, and they think, basically like we just remove kids, but there's so much more involved in it.
Yeah. And
funding is so different than any other, agency here. So it's there's a lot of working parts. So
yeah, you mentioned that bit about funding, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, I wouldn't have get 64%. You said
64.9%.
64.9. Wow. Is the others percentiles more from miscellaneous part of children's services, or how?
Oh well, I think part of it is there's probably some administration costs and all that kind of thing, but they're not going to pay us back for the entire placement cost. So we've worked very hard to find relatives and non-relative kinship, like family, friends, because they don't get paid for taking the children. But that, like, the kids that are in reimbursable settings are either in a licensed foster home, in a licensed group home, or in a residential facility.
Gotcha. Huh. Is there, I know we already mentioned your tasks and duties, is there something that people don't know about your role in general?
I don't think so. I think it's, I just think people don't realize, you know what I mean, and even people probably that work at the agency, that it is part fiscal and part program. Yeah. So I think it was hard for them to decide like where I would fall, for a lot of years until I got my own supervisor position. So, because for years they had me under clerical, or administrative, and which I really didn't do either of those. I was like, I'm the only one that has had this position since 2002. The position that I had didn't exist prior to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, somebody's got to find the balance, right?
Yeah.
Goodness. And, well, since you mentioned a lot of your work is administrative and financial, or fiscal, rather, how often do you get a chance to interact with the public?
I don't really interact with the public. I have, like, partners that I interact with, but mostly through email and phone. So it's people that, like, for Medicaid, it would be, like, Molina. It'll be people from CareSource, Buckeye. Then for the 4E, it's just, you know, the contacts in Columbus. You know, if I have, like, one of those, like, I'm not sure how to figure this one out. I need some help. I used to do the semi-annual reviews, that have to take place on every case that we have open every 6 months.
Oh.
So I was in contact with a lot of people. It would be parents, it would be CASAs, GALs, but I've, like, moved away from that. I don't do that anymore. So I don't have as much interaction, but, you know, I still know so many of the people. I have been friends with Laura Schnecker from juvenile court for years. She worked at Children's Services before she went to juvenile court.
Huh.
And I know a lot of the CASAs just because of being the SAR coordinator for so long. So I have interaction more with, you know, around the campus.
Right.
And I have a lot of interaction with Human Services, Lisa Walton and Lana. I can't tell you her last name because I'm not sure if it's Russian but so I have a lot of interaction with those two. Because they kind of, I don't want to say they go hand in hand, but they'll call and say, oh, you know, do you guys have custody of children or so-and-so, because a parent could be trying to get benefits for that child and that child's not in their home. There's things that, like, we have to turn in, like, when just prior to custody terminating, I have to send a form to Lisa Walton that says that this child is no longer in our agency custody, but because they were a foster child, they are eligible for Medicaid for however long. So I have a lot of interaction more with everybody here. Do you know what I mean? On the campus.
Yeah.
And like I said before, when I was doing some other things, but like this year, my unit is responsible for the Christmas drive. So this year I had more interaction with, like, a lot of the sponsors and the people that were donated unbelievable amounts of toys and financial assistance. So to be part of that, it was, as my last hurrah out, it was nice.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys had people going there constantly. My goodness.
And I know, I'm sure it gets a little annoying to everybody that's in this building, but we have no space.
Right.
And until I think, we get a new building, which I think is in the works, but I don't know when.
Fingers crossed on that. My goodness.
I know. So.
Like you said,
we're busting at the seams. We just keep getting, we keep growing, and so hopefully.
We'll see, right?
Yeah, they say they've got, I think it's like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, and phase 5.
Oh goodness!
I think of course the sheriff's office was the first one.
Yeah.
And the jail, and now, what are they working on right now?
Oh, that would be not clerk of courts, but county court.
County court, and I think we might be in phase 3, or I shouldn't say we. Children's Services might be in phase 3. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
So.
They love their phases. I've done a little bit of study over that, and oh goodness. We'll see, right? Fingers crossed. Where would you?
I hope they do. I think that because right now, we also have a visitation center, which is the townhouse over on, what is that?
Oh yeah,
it shares the parking lot with the old courthouse.
Mm-hmm.
and the CAC. It used to be, they called it the farmhouse, which was next to the fairgrounds. There was a big old white farmhouse. That was our property. Well, not ours, but the county property.
Yeah.
And that was the visitation center. And then when I think the fairgrounds were expanding or something, then they either bought or already owned the townhouse. So, which is fine, but it would be nice if like the visitation center could be housed in the same building that we're in, because they're kind of like out floating there, and I think it would just be more beneficial to the caseworkers being able to see the families. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
to have it all condensed.
so we have 2 visitation case aides, so they supervise the visits.
Mm-hmm.
But they're over there at the townhouse, and so I think it would be really nice. I think the plan is when we do get a building that the visitation center will be housed within the building.
Good.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have guessed that. Yeah, bursting at the seams, as you said. But
right.
Aside from more space, what do you think would be a dream scenario for a larger Phase 3?
I think to have newer accommodations. The building is older.
Yeah.
I think that, people are on top of each other. Everybody shares basically an office.
Mm-hmm.
Quarters are close. I think that I think that if more people understood what Children's Services actually does, I think people call us you just go out and take kids, and we don't. That's not, we can recommend, but really it's the court that says yes or no. And then, working with the families. And so I think I would love to see it people better understand what the agency does.
Yeah.
But I don't know that that'll ever change.
Yeah, unless a name change, right? Because
right.
people see child support or even child services. They see children in the name, they're like, oh, that was them. Mm-hmm. I hope more transparency in the future. Stuff like this recording hopefully would make it more transparent for people.
Right.
Because I think otherwise it can be a little intimidating.
Sure.
We'll see. Fingers crossed.
Right.
Have you found any challenges or have you found working with the public rewarding as little as you've done? Well, you mentioned the drive. But.
Right. The Christmas drive, then my unit was also responsible for the back to school drive that we used to have. The first one, the first year we did it was kind of we just kind of just threw it together, and it was amazing. I think we had 600 and some kids come through. And we kept doing it after that. But as the years have gone on, it's the participation from families and children has dwindled, because I feel like every church has a back to school drive. Joshua's Place is in every school in Warren County, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
So it's the last couple of years we haven't had the program. We keep backpacks that are packed, and so if our caseworkers come to us and say, I need 2 for a 7-year-old boy, an 8-year-old boy, or a 12-year-old girl. But last year, what we did was we had a lot of supplies, but not enough to fill any more backpacks, with the specific things that are the list that you would get from the schools.
Yeah.
So what we did was we took everything up to the commissioner's room, and we put it on Facebook that Warren County teachers come and get it for free. It's yours. And it was the teachers were so grateful, because you hear so many of them have to pay for their own supplies, and so it was great. And I think we got rid of just about everything. So now we still have some backpacks packed, but we have a lot of brand new backpacks that are in boxes. And so Kelly Monk, who is the person in my unit she and I did the Christmas drive, and she'll be in charge of it moving forward. And whatever she wants to do with the back to school or the backpacks. But there's rooms back here that are, one of them is full of, and it's nothing but backpacks.
Yeah. Oh, I believe
some
it.
are packed and some are brand new in boxes. So I think eventually sometime this year she may start working on that room and try to organize it a little bit more. So
that's fantastic to hear.
it is. It's. I mean, we've done some great things, and and for the community, and I think it's. I hope they continue. So.
Absolutely, I love to hear that. My sister she's a high school teacher, and it's great to hear that people are out there looking out for the kids.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah. You mentioned a bunch of coworkers already. You mentioned Kelly. Is there any managers or other coworkers you would like to mention that had an impact on you?
Well, there's a handful of us that are like the long timers.
Yeah.
There's two, Michelle Turley, I think she's at about 27 years.
Oh, wow.
And Melissa Pittman, I think she's at 25 or 26. I'm trying to think. And then Jenny Carmen, who's our fiscal officer, she and I started a week apart. So she's at 22 years and about 9 months as well. But she had worked here at OMB prior.
Oh.
So, and her husband's Chris Carmen. He's one of the plumbers.
I thought he sounded familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep. And her daughter Kaylee now works at Children's Services too. So, but those, the people that you work with, and there's a lot of people that I work with, at the agency that have been there now for, a long time. You're looking at 17 years, 12 years. But we also have a lot of brand new people. We've had a huge turnover in the last few years.
Oh, and just in the last few, you say?
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that is specifically COVID related, or are these are fiscal?
I think it's fiscally related.
That's fair. And is that something you'd like to speak on? If you want to.
I think that, I think that everybody at Children's Services could use an increase in salary. But I think that's across the board everywhere you go, basically. And that's probably about all I would say on that.
Sure thing. Are there any other memorable projects you'd like to mention?
No, not really. I mean, I think like the Christmas drive has been big. Our back to school drive was always very successful. And I always did participate in, the foster care unit always had like a Christmas program. Somebody was always there dressed up as Santa and Mrs. Claus.
Yeah.
And then, the foster parents would bring the kids. And so I always really participated in those as well. And foster care, they always had like a picnic. But like this year I really didn't, because helping with the Christmas drive, time was very limited. So
fair.
Yeah. We just totaled up, I think we did 452 kids this year. 452.
Wow. And that was and you limited your scope this year, hadn't you?
Because I'd say 21 and 22 were probably our highest, which were pushing 650 to not 700, but at least 650. 21 and 22. 23 we tried to scale back some, but we were over 500. And this year we scaled back. That we really just opened it up for children that our agency is involved with, meaning like an open case. It doesn't necessarily mean custody, but the agency was involved with. We also opened it up to kinship families that we've been involved with in the last 6 months.
Oh.
But those years prior, we opened it up to all of Warren County, and we just can't physically do it.
Yeah.
So-
No, that's quite a bit.
I mean, we have, and I can't say enough about our sponsors. We've had several of the same sponsors, like big companies.
Oh.
We've also had, outstanding like individuals, churches that really come through. I mean, it's been amazing. And we have fiscal donations, like gift card donations. Like one church, like right before Christmas, donated like an amazing amount of gift cards. And moving forward, then we also have things to start with next year as well.
All
Do you know what I mean?
right.
So it's not
Yeah.
like flat and we've got to start from the ground up. We've got like our we call it the Christmas room, but we'll use some of that if we get children that come into agency custody and they have nothing. So we do have some clothes. We have it's always nice to have a new toy or a puzzle or something for the child to have.
Yeah.
So we're able to provide some things during the year as well.
That's fantastic to hear. Wow. A lot of that I never would have guessed, especially larger companies jumping in. I wouldn't have thought that they would have.
And they're, and I don't know how large. There's one company, Maine, MANE, and I'm not sure what they do, but they have been a great sponsor the last few years. This year, in King's High School, they always do a huge donation. And let's see who else, like several churches. And we also had, I think it's a Mason, either music club or piano club. This year, I think this was I'm not 100% sure if it's their first year, but they donated 250 pieces. So they were brand new bicycles, toys, all kinds of things. All kinds of toys, art stuff, and all kinds of things it's been wonderful.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. That's really
But
cool.
I think churches are probably the bulk of our sponsors. But we have some wonderful like individuals that want to sponsor. So
That's nice to hear.
yeah, it's been great.
Think you're gonna jump back in next year just to help out?
No. Don't think so.
Fair enough. What are some of your other highlights of your time in the county?
Oh, well, I can't say, because I've lived in Warren County now for, let's see, probably since 87. So I've seen, a lot of the changes, Kings Island, the growth, like I always was like the annexing to Mason for a lot of it. The subdivisions, the biggest thing that I've noticed now, because, I've driven the same way to work for the last 22 years.
Yeah.
It's Montgomery Road to 48, and 48 is unbelievable now.
Yeah.
I mean, they've done a great job with it, because that, you would always be backed up, like all the way down the hill into basically South Lebanon, waiting to get, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and the other
I do.
great thing is the new exit, just the one just south of the Kings Island exit going south.
Mm-hmm.
When I come to work, I come 22 and 3 to 48, but going home I do 71 and jump off at that new exit, and it's great.
Yeah. I suppose the highways would just, that would be the main thing you would see changing it all. My goodness. I know Mason's always has exploded in the last 20, 30 years.
Right.
And
When I started at 20 Mile House in 1981, Fields Erdel was a 4-way stop. Literally 4-way stop. There was Natorps on one corner, Sunoco on the other corner. I'm trying to think what else was there. What was on the... But really, there was like nothing.
Wow. Man.
Lots of changes. Those are the biggest changes that I've seen, since my time here.
Yeah.
And in Warren County.
Man. Yeah, that tracks from everything I've been hearing about.
Right.
Whew.
I do have to say, though, like, I've had some great people, like Supervisor. So Ann Jurgens, who was, she was the one that worked at child support and then went to National Child Support. She was like, she was the one I was friends with.
With the person you
She was the
mentioned
one
earlier.
who, like, encouraged me to come to Warren County and work here. And then, I've worked under 4 directors at the agency in the 22 years. So Jeff Centers was our first one. Patty Jacobs was the second director, and then Susan Wather, who really, I feel like she's the one who encouraged me and got me into that supervisor role.
Mm-hmm.
And then Shauna Jones was the last one.
Yeah.
So,
You
but
know,
Susan really was the one who, I think she saw that, the work I did, my work ethic. I was always at work.
Mm-hmm.
Did whatever I could to help people. So she was the one who really said, "Okay, let's move her on up." So I'll be forever grateful.
Absolutely. No, not another one. Too many directors to work under.
Right.
Well, I guess this is a really broad question, but did anything significant happen within the county government during your time here? We can talk about recessions, or we can talk about COVID.
I think probably like COVID was probably one of the biggest things, but for me, I really struggled like when we had to go home and work. I live by myself, so like my interaction is when I come to work every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so after I can't remember how many weeks, it was 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I think they were going to let some of us go back because of like we had to be working. So I told Susan, I said, I'll go back. Let me come back because I don't have an office set up at home. I was sitting at the dining room table. I was just like, eh. And a lot of the programs that I do, I couldn't get at home.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I need to be back at the office.
It really is stopping you from getting up and moving around and.
Yeah,
even
I mean,
talking
I
to
got
everybody
up
else
and got
too.
dressed, and just like I was going to work every day. That's just me. I know other people are different, but
you got to get into the setting of work.
Right. So I think the COVID was the biggest thing that really kind of, I don't want to say it did change because it changed some of like how things go at the agency, because prior to COVID, people would come in for meetings. Mm-hmm. Then during COVID, it went to like you could do it through Zoom and Teams, and now it still stays that way. It's like we don't have as many people come to the office as like we used to have for meetings and that kind of thing. People will prefer to do it through Teams or Zoom.
Yeah.
I think that has been the biggest change. But I don't feel like, and I don't know if it's fiscally driven, meaning,
if it's cheaper to do.
No, what I was going to say is like the people that they don't tend to stay in the same job like people used to. You know what I mean? Like me, almost 23 years here. The other girls, 27, 25. I don't see people doing that anymore at the agency. Mm. And when I first started, I mean, it was the people had been there like 33 years, 30 years, So I think that's the biggest change to me that I see in the workforce. And I'm sure it's not just children's services. I just think it's different. And I also think work ethic is very different. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's generational thing, could be, I'm not sure. But I also do think that the financial side of it does play a big part.
Yeah, money talks, right?
Well, yeah, I think I do think so, and but I also feel like your performance, your work ethic, should account for some things.
Fair.
And then I hope that gets better.
Fingers crossed. I'd like to see that too. What are some of the most important things you've learned working in Warren County?
I think probably a few of the most important things are, I think, more with our clients and the children that we work with. Not that I've ever do it like one-on-one, because like I said, I'm more fiscal, some program, some fiscal. But in the past, I have done like the SARs and that. And and you do interact with parents and you interact with CASAs and GALs, and so you do interact with a lot of people. But I feel like everybody needs to remember that it's about the children. It's not about anybody else but the children, and making sure that they're safe.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's probably my biggest, I don't want to say takeaway, but people have to remember it's about the kids. It's not about them. It's not about the attorney. It's about the children, and we need to do what's best for that child.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that's my biggest takeaway.
I can see people getting caught up in everything.
They
right?
do, and and it's a lot of times you'll have parents that are one blames the other, that kind of thing, and then the kids are put in the middle, and I just feel like you think about it, when these kids are taken away from their parents, that's their parent. They don't know that something's not right in the home. That's what they've lived with.
Yeah.
So, and I think that, I have seen a lot of children that have been adopted, and now that they're older and getting into the teen years, and some of the behaviors are rearing their ugly heads, and the parents don't want them anymore. It's very difficult. Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry, my contacts are driving me crazy.
No worries. Yeah, that's why you opted for audio. And
right. Like, I'll be like,
Yeah, something we need to remember. All about the children.
Yes.
What do you think you're going to miss about working for the county?
I think I'm going to miss the people the most. I have done the same job basically for almost 23 years. So part of me, I'm ready for something different. I'm ready to get back to like more of the creative side. Like I did the picture framing. Not that I would go back into picture framing and I would never have my own business again. It's just there's too much stress and all that.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm not one to sit around. I struggle on the weekends just trying to relax and stay at home. And not like I'm not a hyper person by any stretch, but so I'm trying to give myself January and February. Try not to do anything except like do some purging, cleaning out some closets, that kind of thing, and see how I do. And then I may have to get a part-time job because I will go great. I just am, especially like in like this time, it's like the weather's not great. You can't be outside. I mean, I can go out and walk, but I don't want to put on 4 layers of clothes. I do go to the gym. I've kind of been absent from that since like around Thanksgiving because that's when the whole Christmas program really started to kick into gear.
Oh, yeah.
So I get back to the gym and
occupy your time.
Try to, yeah.
There's people at the gym that I think you would.
Well, and and my mom is fortunately, she's in good health. She lives in Loveland, so I think I'm going to try to spend more time with her. So try to get her out a little bit more.
Yeah.
She just turned 86, so, but she still drives a stick shift and
Goodness.
yeah. She and I go to New Hampshire every summer for 2 weeks now, so as long as if she wants to keep going, then we're there.
That'll be nice.
Yeah.
My grandmother just turned 86 this year. And my goodness, I can't imagine her still driving a stick shift and running around. She
doesn't go as far as she used to.
Yeah.
I'd say her radius is probably about 5 miles, like Kroger's every day or every other day, the post office every few days. But yeah, she still drives the stick shift.
Good for her.
I know.
Good for her. Oh. What advice are you going to give to current Warren County employees?
I've thought about that just in like coming up on retirement.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that I have a lot of advice to give. I feel like people need to make their own decisions about like if they want to stay or they want to go.
Mm-hmm.
So I just feel like it's very different now than like when I started and for a lot of the years that I've been here, because like I said, we talked before, people don't stay in jobs like they used to. I don't see any of them but a few staying, like really making it their career.
Mm.
And there are a few that will, and I hope that they do. And I can't, my advice would be, get up and go to work every day and do the best job you can do. But it's also, I have done that for almost 23 years, and I'm walking away, leaving 1900 hours of sick time.
Oh.
Because they only pay you out. Well, I don't know about you, but I was grandfathered in, so I get 240 hours. They cap it.
Oh wow.
They tell you a quarter, but it caps at 240.
Just want to see how far you get.
So I've always felt like, I don't want to say penalized, but in a sense, for being a good employee, being healthy, taking care of myself.
Yeah.
Because I'm walking away from, and I, didn't call off sick, when I had a headache or this or that. And I think it would be beneficial for them to think about like upping those hours to, and maybe, like if you stay for 5 years, you get a certain number of hours. If you stay for 10 years, you know what I mean?
They
do some kind of, I don't want to say reward. I don't know what the word is I want to use.
I know OMB does little bits of benefits for people who have stayed within county for a certain allotted amount of time. Like benefits, maybe is what you're looking for?
No, it's not benefits. It's, I know like one of the big things they've talked about like in our agency is like succession planning, trying to give people opportunity to move up. Like when I started, we had caseworker 1, caseworker 2, caseworker 3. Well, now we have caseworker 4s. We also have a training coordinator. So and that's all good because we need all that.
Yeah.
But what is I don't know what the word is, but I just, and I think I'd even mentioned it prior, about like asking if the county would ever consider increasing that. And, and they may going forward. I don't know that. But I think it would be a good incentive for people, I don't know if you know about the deferred comp program.
Yes, I've heard of it.
Okay, and I've encouraged so many people, especially the young ones, get into deferred comp. It's an extra savings account that chances are you're not going to be disciplined enough to put away while you're working.
Yeah.
I think that's a great benefit that we have. So I just hope things continue to get better.
Mm-hmm.
I hope people will stay, but I also know that when you're in as a caseworker, the burnout rate is very high.
Yeah, on the ground.
Yes,
Dealing
out in
with-
the trenches, and
Yeah.
and I'm not, and I just think we had a lot of changes this year, and I felt like this is the time to go. So.
Yeah, you don't need to learn all the extra changes. It helps.
Right.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, not really.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Thank you for coming in and talking with me.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, this will conclude the interview. Thank you.